If there's one fitness metric that predicts how long you'll live, it's this: VO2 max. We've talked a lot about this before on the channel, but I think it deserves its own video. So I'm going to break down what it is, why it's important, and how you can improve your own with just one kettlebell. So what is VO2 max? Well, VO2 max is basically a fancy way of saying the strength of your heart, lungs, blood vessels, the ability of your red blood cells to carry oxygen, and how well your muscles can pull oxygen out of your blood. I like to think of it like engine size and efficiency in a car. A bigger engine and a more efficient engine means better endurance, more power, more energy, and the car will probably last longer. The more efficient the engine is, the longer the car will last. So it's measured by the amount of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute that is used by your muscles during really hard exercise. Okay, that sounded really confusing, and don't worry if you don't fully understand. If you're still confused, just think of it as your cardiovascular fitness for now, and I'm sure things will get clearer as we go through the video. And actually, VO2 max is so important that a lot of doctors are starting to see it as something that's equally important as blood pressure and blood cholesterol. So why does it matter for living better for longer? Well, large studies show that for every small increase in VO2 max, your risk of death from any cause goes down by 13%. And there's actually no limit to the benefits. It's something that we call a dose-response relationship, where basically the higher your VO2 max is, the lower your risk of all-cause mortality, which is death from any cause. And there is so much research out there that suggests that a higher VO2 max protects us from things like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and even some kinds of cancer. And I like to think of VO2 max as kind of the plumbing system of your body. It's not just your heart and it's not just your lungs, although those are a massive part of it. It's also determined in part by how well your blood cells, your red blood cells, can carry oxygen, how much can they carry, and then also how well can your muscles pull that oxygen from your blood and use it as energy for themselves. And the best part is that you can improve every single aspect, every single factor that goes into what your VO2 max is. But first, how do you measure it by yourself? Well, this is tricky, and the best option you have for measuring it is probably just your smartwatch. You can provide an estimate. It's not going to be fully accurate, but it will give you a fairly good idea of what it is in most cases. And actually, you don't really need to know the exact number. You don't need to know exactly what your VO2 max is. You just want a ballpark figure. Your watch will be able to do this fairly well most of the time. There are more accurate ways that are used for clinical populations with cardiovascular disease or cancer, and this is done before they have surgeries to make sure that they're going to be fit enough to go through the surgery. And unless you're unfortunate enough to have a major surgery, you're probably not going to be able to have one of these tests unless you pay for it. They also use them on elite athletes, but for the most part, your watch is absolutely fine. So how can you improve VO2 max with just kettlebells? Is it even possible? Well, yeah, it is absolutely possible, and short intense intervals or HIIT training, high intensity interval training with kettlebells can raise your VO2 max faster than steady jogging. This isn't me saying that kettlebells are better than running, although I certainly have my own personal preference, but it's just a lot of the science does say that HIIT training can result in greater improvements in your VO2 max than long, steady state cardio like jogging. So the best movement really for improving your VO2 max is kettlebell swings. There's a reason that I talk about them in pretty much every single video, and it's because they burn a lot of oxygen very quickly, which is exactly the sort of movements that improve your VO2 max over time. Overall, it is one of the best exercises that you could possibly do to improve your VO2 max, as long as it's hard enough. And I'll come to that a bit later. How do you know how hard is hard enough? Snatches are also a very good exercise at improving VO2 max, although I don't really do them as much anymore. They're still a fantastic exercise. And the easiest way to structure your training, I think, is in one of the following ways. You could either do 30 seconds of exercise where you're working really hard, followed by 30 to 60 seconds of rest. Or you could do the classic EMOM workout. Every minute on the minute, you perform a certain number of reps of a certain exercise. If you haven't watched my last video, this goes through an EMOM workout that I do every Friday. It takes me 13 minutes and is really good at improving VO2 max. And you could do this for anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes at a time. What are the main principles that you need to follow when you're training with kettlebells to improve your VO2 max? Well, the most important principle is work hard. You should be breathing pretty heavy. I'm not saying you have to run yourself into the ground or put yourself at risk, especially if you have risk factors like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, a history of cardiovascular disease. But if you're healthy enough and you warm up properly, you need to work hard if you want your VO2 max to improve. On the effort scale, you should be aiming for about an 8 out of 10. You should be breathing heavy, You shouldn't be able to say more than a couple of words during your sets, and you should slightly recover during rest periods, but not by loads. So try and do this kind of workout, this kind of high intensity interval workouts at least 2 times per week if you want the best results possible for your VO2 max. Maybe more depending on your goals, but at least 2 times per week. So that was a really quick overview of how kettlebells can be really useful when it comes to living longer. Comment any questions down below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.